stablecoins, the role that they can play, major institutions really making it clear that this is going to be a key part of the way money moves in the world.
There are moments in crypto history when everything quietly shifts before the mainstream even realizes what happened. You know, those subtle moves that don't make headlines today but completely rewrite the narrative months later. Well, that's exactly what just happened. Because Circle and PayPal just flipped the switch. And guess what? The project standing right in the middle of it all is Stellar, XLM. Let's start here. For years, we've been hearing about financial inclusion, instant payments, stablecoin interoperability, all the buzzwords. But in reality, most institutions never truly delivered. They were building in isolation. Circle had USDC. PayPal had its own network. Banks were doing their thing. Stellar was quietly connecting the dots. Now, for the first time, we're seeing that connection come alive in real time. Circle recently began expanding USDC issuance directly on Stellar, reigniting a relationship that many people thought had gone quiet. This means transactions between wallets, remittance platforms, and fintech apps can now move regulated, fully backed stablecoins at near zero fees and lightning speed. And then came PayPal. Their stablecoin, PYUSD, has started showing signs of interoperability, and PayPal's recent blockchain developer initiatives have focused on cross-network liquidity. You don't have to look hard to see where that leads. Because while Ethereum might have birthed DeFi, Stellar was designed for cross-border liquidity from day one. And PayPal, Circle, and every other fintech giant knows the next evolution isn't about yield farming. It's about real utility, moving value globally, instantly, compliantly. So when we say floodgates, we're not exaggerating. What just opened is a gateway between traditional finance and blockchain payments at scale. And Stellar, the same network that's been building quietly with the UN, MoneyGram, IBM, and now with the Stellar Foundation pushing deep institutional adoption, suddenly finds itself at the center of a trillion-dollar movement. Here's the key insight most people are missing. When PayPal moves, banks follow. When Circle expands, regulators pay attention. And when both are working towards stablecoin interoperability, networks like Stellar stop being altcoins. They become infrastructure. That's the transition happening right now. And let's be honest, most investors are still asleep on it. Everyone's watching the Bitcoin ETFs, the XRP legal updates, the macro charts, while the real action is happening under the radar. Because when fintech giants align with blockchain rails, it doesn't stay small for long. PayPal alone has 435 million active accounts. Circle processes billions through USDC each month. If even 0.5% of that volume starts flowing through Stellar rails, XLM's utility will explode, and so will its value capture. And it's not just speculation, it's mathematics. Here's why. Every transaction on Stellar requires a small amount of XLM to operate, a native token utility baked into the network itself. As more USDC, PYUSD, and tokenized assets move through Stellar, that means more XLM gets used, locked, and transacted daily. And when demand increases against a fixed supply, well, you already know how that story ends. But there's something deeper happening too, something psychological. For years, Stellar has lived in the shadow of its cousin, XRP. Same founder origins, same mission. But now, Stellar's path is diverging into something more real-world focused. Less about institutional corridors, more about fintech adoption. And that's exactly where Circle and PayPal thrive. They're not waiting for central banks to give them permission. They're building the new system themselves. The bottom line is this. The old guard just stepped into Stellar's playground. And they're not doing it for hype. They're doing it because they finally need what Stellar built a decade ago. Fast settlement, cheap liquidity, global accessibility, and compliance-ready infrastructure. This is the Amazon moment for XLM, when the invisible infrastructure starts becoming indispensable. And just like Amazon Web Services quietly powered the entire internet economy before most people realized it, Stellar is about to power a massive share of the global digital money movement without shouting about it. Circle and PayPal may have just opened the floodgates, but what's coming through those gates? That's the real story, and it's way bigger than anyone's prepared for. Because once this volume starts flowing, the game changes forever. Let's be real, Most people never took Stellar seriously because it never tried to look like the rest of crypto. It didn't chase meme trends. It didn't promise 1000% APYs or pump cycles. Stellar quietly built infrastructure, not hype. And in 2025, that's exactly what the world suddenly needs. Because when Circle and PayPal opened their networks, they didn't need a meme coin. They needed a network that works. And that's where Stellar shines. See, XLM's design wasn't meant for speculation. It was meant for velocity, for movement, for the invisible layer between banks, fintechs, and users who don't even realize blockchain is working underneath. This is where the Stellar Consensus Protocol, SCP, becomes the hero of the story. Unlike traditional proof-of-work or even proof-of-stake systems, SCP allows transactions to confirm in about 3 to 5 seconds with near-zero fees. It's lightweight, secure, and perfectly tailored for payments, remittances, and stablecoin settlements. The very same use cases Circle and PayPal are now scaling. But it's not just speed that gives Stellar its edge. It's simplicity. Every Stellar transaction costs a fraction of a cent. No gas wars. No fluctuating fees. No user confusion. That's critical for financial institutions. They need predictability, compliance, and global reach. Stellar offers all three. And here's where the magic starts, the network effect. Because each new player that joins the Stellar network adds not just users, but liquidity pathways. When Circle brings USDC to Stellar, that's not just a new stablecoin. It's a direct bridge into every exchange, wallet, and app that already supports USDC globally. When PayPal begins connecting stablecoins to cross-network infrastructure, it's not just expanding utility, it's creating interoperability between traditional fintech and decentralized liquidity pools. Think about that for a second. PayPal's PYUSD on Stellar could flow seamlessly to USDC in another ecosystem, then into tokenized euros or naira via regulated corridors. That's borderless finance, and Stellar was literally architected for that. Now add the Stellar Development Foundation, SDF, into the mix. For years, they've been forming partnerships most people ignored. IBM, MoneyGram, Franklin Templeton, Circle, and now Soroban, Stellar's smart contract platform. These aren't random logos. They're infrastructure anchors that make Stellar the connective tissue between traditional finance and blockchain-native ecosystems. What Soroban does is take that same payment power and add programmable money to it. Imagine stablecoins on Stellar that can execute conditional transfers, automate settlements, or even manage treasury functions, all on-chain, all in seconds. That's where this is heading. And remember, Stellar's transaction speed, cost efficiency, and reliability make it one of the few blockchains capable of handling institutional-grade volumes without compromising decentralization. But here's what truly separates XLM from the rest. Its mission alignment. While most blockchains compete for dominance, Stellar's goal has always been inclusion. That's why NGOs use it for humanitarian aid. Why UN agencies have piloted payments on it. Why fintechs in Africa, Latin America, and Asia use it to move funds where banks can't. Now picture that infrastructure being supercharged by PayPal and Circle. We're talking about billions of people who will interact with blockchain without even knowing it's blockchain, because their transfers, payments, and digital dollars are quietly running through the Stellar rails. And that's the part most people underestimate. The best tech doesn't announce itself. It disappears into the background, quietly powering everything. Think about TCP/IP. Nobody talks about it, but it's the backbone of the internet. In the same way, Stellar is becoming the TCP/IP of digital money. And once institutions realize they can use it to move real money faster, cheaper, and more securely than SWIFT or traditional systems, they'll start migrating, not because of hype, but because of necessity. You can already see it happening. MoneyGram's integration with Stellar allows people in over 180 countries to cash in and out of digital assets directly. That means someone in Nigeria can receive USDC from a family member in the US and cash out instantly through a local partner. No middlemen, no delays, no insane fees. That's real-world adoption. That's impact. And that's exactly what PayPal and Circle are stepping into. The network effect isn't just about users. It's about liquidity, partnerships, and credibility compounding together. The more on-ramps Stellar builds, the more off-ramps it unlocks. The more value moves through the system, the more necessary it becomes. And as the institutions join, retail follows. Because that's the pattern we've seen every cycle. When the big players move, the flow of capital changes forever. Now combine that with what's happening behind the scenes, tokenized assets, real-world use cases, and the coming wave of ISO 20022 interoperability. Stellar is one of the few blockchains natively aligned with those global standards. That's why institutions like Circle and PayPal aren't just using Stellar. They're positioning around it. Because as compliance frameworks tighten, only networks that are ISO compliant, energy efficient, and regulatory friendly will survive. And guess what? Stellar checks every box. Low carbon footprint, high security, regulatory compatibility, instant settlement. It's as if the entire system was built for this 2025 pivot, the moment when blockchain stops being a buzzword and becomes the financial internet itself. So, while everyone else is watching Bitcoin ETF flows, the real infrastructure of the new money web is already forming, quietly, efficiently, and inevitably around Stellar. Because when the floodgates opened, Stellar didn't just catch the wave. It became the channel through which the entire tide will flow. Every bull cycle in crypto starts with a spark. But what separates a short-term pump from a true paradigm shift is when institutions stop testing and start building. And that's exactly where we are right now with Stellar, XLM. When Circle brought USDC back to Stellar and PayPal began integrating stablecoin functionality across its ecosystem, it wasn't just about payments. It was about validation. It was the financial world saying, "We've seen enough. This network works." Now the dominoes are lining up. Because here's the thing. Institutions never move alone. When one major player like PayPal expands into blockchain infrastructure, competitors immediately follow. When Circle doubles down on interoperability, the rest of the fintech sector takes notice. Nobody wants to be the last one in. And the more integrations we see, the more unstoppable Stellar's growth becomes. Let's talk scale for a second. PayPal moves roughly $1.5 trillion annually through its payment network. Circle processes billions in USDC transactions monthly. Together, these companies represent some of the largest digital payment volumes on the planet. Now imagine even a small fraction of that traffic, say 3 to 5%, flowing through the Stellar network. That's tens of billions in liquidity instantly migrating into XLM's ecosystem. And remember, every single Stellar transaction requires XLM as network fuel. That's not just adoption, that's compounding demand. The domino effect here is like how Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal all normalized online payments in the early 2000s. One integration triggers another until suddenly it's not a new technology anymore. It's just the way things are done. And this is where Stellar's advantage becomes undeniable. Because unlike Ethereum or Solana, Stellar wasn't built for speculation or DeFi farming. It was engineered for exactly this: institutional-grade settlement, compliance-friendly, and cost-efficient money movement. Once that model proves profitable for Circle and PayPal, other institutions, banks, cross-border remittance firms, fintech startups, and even governments will join the same network. It's how systems evolve. Nobody wants to build from scratch when there's already a proven foundation. Now let's zoom out a little further. When you look at what the IMF, BIS, and G20 have been emphasizing, cross-border interoperability, real-time settlements, and ISO 20022 compliance, you realize Stellar is already years ahead. And guess who's aligning with those goals? Every major central bank exploring CBDCs. That's not a coincidence. Because while Ripple XRP continues to focus on institutional banking corridors, Stellar has quietly positioned itself as the CBDC testing ground for real-world use cases. From Ukraine's digital hryvnia to pilot projects across Africa and Europe, Stellar's blockchain is already being tested by governments for stablecoin and digital currency frameworks. Now connect that to what PayPal and Circle just did, and you see how this fits into the bigger global puzzle. The infrastructure that enables stablecoin and CBDC interoperability needs to exist before governments go live. Stellar is one of the few networks ready to provide that bridge today. So when people say, institutions are coming, the truth is they're already here. They're just moving quietly under the radar through partnerships, pilots, and liquidity tests that will soon scale into full-blown adoption. And here's the key. Those institutions don't care about token speculation. They care about efficiency, regulation, and reliability. Three things Stellar delivers better than almost any network in crypto. Now let's talk numbers, because this is where things get interesting for holders. If you look at Stellar's current market cap versus its potential transaction volume once PayPal, Circle, and other institutional partners scale up, there's a massive disconnect. Stellar is still valued like a mid-cap crypto, but it's building infrastructure that could process hundreds of billions in annual volume. That's like valuing early Visa stock as if it were just a startup. As adoption compounds, XLM's utility demand rises automatically. The more transactions, the more XLM gets used, and the tighter the supply-demand curve becomes. We're not talking about hype pumps. We're talking organic price appreciation driven by real usage. And what happens when usage increases while speculation kicks in? That's when you see those explosive market moves. Because once the market catches up to what's already happening behind the scenes, once analysts start connecting the dots between PayPal, Circle, CBDCs, and Stellar, it won't just be retail chasing XLM. Institutional capital will flood in too. They'll want exposure to the backbone of the new payment internet. We're also heading into a world where everything gets tokenized: bonds, real estate, carbon credits, even intellectual property. The IMF and World Bank have already started researching frameworks for tokenized asset regulation. And guess what kind of blockchain those assets will need? One that's fast, transparent, and regulatory compliant, just like Stellar. This is the phase where liquidity becomes infinite, where money, assets, and data all move on the same digital highway. And when that happens, Stellar won't just be part of the system, it will be the system. This is what the floodgates look like when they're fully open. A global network of banks, fintechs, and governments all using Stellar rails to move digital assets 24/7. And it all started with Circle and PayPal flipping the first domino. Most people won't realize what just happened until it's too late. Because what's unfolding right now with Stellar, XLM, Circle, and PayPal isn't just another crypto partnership. It's the quiet beginning of a new financial era. One that isn't built on speculation, but on utility, trust, and global interoperability. The floodgates aren't about to open, they already have. And if you've been paying attention, you can feel it. The energy, the shift, that sense that something massive is taking shape under the surface while the world still argues about ETF approvals and meme coin pumps. But those who've been watching Stellar all along know this was always the plan. Because from day one, Stellar wasn't trying to be flashy, it was trying to be foundational. It wasn't built for hype cycles, it was built for generations. For the kid in Kenya receiving remittances through a Stellar-powered app. For the small business owner in Brazil accepting USDC payments. For the unbanked billions who don't even know they're using blockchain rails when their money moves. This is what happens when quiet innovation meets unstoppable necessity. Let's zoom out. Circle and PayPal didn't just pick Stellar for convenience, they picked it because it works. Because it's efficient, scalable, compliant, and fast. Because it solves the problem every fintech and government has been trying to fix for decades. How to move value as easily as sending a text. And in that world, XLM becomes the oil that keeps the entire machine running. Every transaction, every bridge, every transfer, all powered by the same token that most of the world still underestimates. That's why this next phase isn't about hype, it's about recognition. At some point, the market will realize that Stellar has quietly become the backbone of real-world blockchain adoption. And when that realization hits, when institutions, investors, and media outlets start connecting the dots, that's when XLM stops being the forgotten coin and becomes a cornerstone of the digital financial era. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And when it happens, it won't be gradual. It'll be a wave, fast, powerful, undeniable. Because institutional adoption doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in momentum, and that momentum is already here. Now imagine what happens next. PayPal's 435 million users gaining access to blockchain-based payments. Circle's USDC expanding to millions of fintech apps. Banks exploring Stellar rails for instant cross-border liquidity. Governments launching CBDCs using Stellar infrastructure. That's not fantasy, that's the next 12 months. And while everyone else debates narratives, Stellar will be doing what it's always done. Building quietly, moving relentlessly, scaling globally. Because revolutions don't announce themselves. They unfold. And for XLM holders who see what's happening right now, this could be one of those once-in-a-decade windows, the kind history looks back on and says, that was the turning point. So here's the message. If you've been researching Stellar, watching its partnerships, studying its roadmap, trust your observation skills. You're seeing something most of the world isn't yet ready to see. Because when the largest payment institutions in the world align with the most efficient blockchain for real-world money movement, the outcome isn't speculation, it's transformation. And you, watching this right now, are early enough to understand it before it becomes mainstream. If this breakdown helped you see where things are heading, hit that like button so the algorithm knows this content actually matters. Drop a comment below and tell me where you think Stellar goes next, because this community sees things before they happen. And of course, subscribe if you're serious about staying early to the next phase of this financial reset, because the moment you understand what Stellar, Circle, and PayPal just set in motion, you'll realize this isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of the next financial revolution.